Hello, Just Jax here and welcome to my channel, and this is Starry Night Sky part 2. Not up as quick as I'd have liked it to have been, but there we go, these things happen and I must press on. I have this ongoing, I'm still working at the moment part-time at least anyway, and I picked up an extra, so that did throw me a little bit out of sync. So I do nights, so everything goes a bit hell for leather sometimes. But yes, hope you are enjoying what you're seeing so far and continue to do so. This, for those of you who haven't seen part 1, this is all to do with, this is a 2-set piece, basically 2 canvases that I'm working on at the same time. So they are technically a whole as together. It's acrylic on canvas with the colours titanium white, ultramarine blue, cerulean blue, just plain purple, a little pearl white and gold. And in the first video I got all the background done and I played the stars, which I do love the effect of the stars. They came out brilliant. I love how they get caught in the light so you can't always see them. Has a really nice twinkling like effect. So we're just in the process of giving an extra layer to the moon. I believe that will be on both canvases, just to give it that final little pop so it can stand out and be bright and vivid. And yeah, we will be experimenting with clouds as well. I'm currently doing voiceover again. As I think I mentioned in the last video, I've had a few hiccups along the way, part of the learning process, and this was still in that frame of recording it upside down, so I had to rotate it, recording with failed audio. The mic wasn't strong enough. It would pick up the clatter of the plates on the table, but it really wouldn't pick me up at all. So that was just no good. That wouldn't be very calming. So hence the voiceover now. It's on the plus side, it's far more in focus than the first 2 videos that I put up, and well, there's still room for improvement there, and the lighting is much better and the waves have gone. I had some terrible horizontal, like banding almost, appearing throughout the first 2 videos, so thankfully that's gone, so it should make the viewing more pleasurable from this point on and from the last video point on. I do have even more progress to report on. I've been working on the 5th canvas, Cosmic Cat, and I have tripod fully erected and my camera arm. So yeah, I was able to raise the height so much more, which, fingers crossed, so I've yet to upload those videos and check properly. It should be even clearer, and I've got some better lighting for the situation as well. So yeah, it should be clearer, you'll be able to see more. It definitely needed addressing because the next canvas is slightly bigger yet again, and you wouldn't have seen half of what I was doing. So really glad that that's up and fine and not going anywhere. It's held down by my partner's weights, so I don't have to worry about catching it and squiffing the angle out. So yes, I hope you enjoy the video. I will be popping in and out to let you know what I was doing, techniques, any things that also crop up that I'm reminded of as I'm watching it back myself. So yeah, I hope you enjoy. this is where your test pieces will always come in handy for whatever you're working on, because you don't have to just gamble straight onto the canvas then, especially if you want to try out different techniques. Like I'm about to, in the video at least, work on the clouds, and I tried a little dry brushing, which is where you have a bone dry paintbrush and you just have the tiniest dab of paint on the end, and I really mean the tiniest dab, like it's barely touching the bristles, and even then you'll probably wipe quite a bit more off on a bit of scrap paper. And then, as you can see, I'll just go over the surface and it has quite a smoky appear, and it picks up any texture that there is. So it's brilliant for painting miniatures and models and sculptures, because that will highlight details and tiny cracks and crevices that you wouldn't, or you'd struggle to see off the bat yourself without having some nice strong optics on. And I also try a wet application, so I make the paint incredibly watery, almost, well, it's pretty much water with like a dab of painting there, and apply that and build it up in layers. And yes, I did try and do a red cloud. That's not because I'm doing a red cloud, that is just, I knew I wasn't going to use that crimson red anymore. That was from the first two canvases, and I didn't want it to go to waste, so I may as well have used it just for a little experimentation. So there will be no red clouds. This is going to be white clouds with a subtle hint of purple on the underside. So it should be, well, should be really good. And yeah, so we have a little dabble here, and you don't have to just use the techniques that I use. If you have any cloud / smoky techniques and you'd be happy to share them, please do, because I'm always up for hearing other people's ideas, how they achieve things, because a lot of the times you don't, you'll think of things yourself, but you don't think of what everyone thinks of, obviously. So it's always good to spitball when you're creating, because your idea can progress with the input of others and change and adapt and improve quite often. And it gets your creative juices flowing, and then it makes you think of other options and avenues. Like, I didn't try it in this video, but cotton wool, balls of cotton wool, they can have a really nice application in this sort of nature, making, smoky things, misty things, clouds. If you were to try that, I'd suggest not using such watery paint, having it a little bit thicker, so it wouldn't be a dry cotton wool, but somewhere in between really, really watery, fluid. You want it nice and fluid, so the paint isn't holding itself. Otherwise, you'll end up with blobs when you cotton wool dab your clouds on that way. But yeah, you might want that. So yeah, do share. I also attempt, when I do the wetter stuff, dab in some away with some kitchen roll. When I decide on what I finally wanted to do, I didn't really do that. I'd bring that out occasionally if I got too wet or there was too much of a blob of watery paint in the middle of my clouds. But apart from that, I just went with the wet application and building it up in layers. this is also where I had a little touch-up work to do. I like to paint bird's eye view style. I don't really like to wrap around the canvas, but what you do see bird's eye view, I like to be a crisp image. So every now and again you will get little parts of the, especially working on canvas, where the paint hasn't quite sunk in, or a little speck of white where it's just, you know, dispersed over the top of, rather than sinking in. So I just do a little touch-up work to make sure that when this is face on, you're not detracted by flashes of white where they shouldn't be. With my little setup in the kitchen, I've rather handily got a radiator right behind me, so when you see the canvas just whip off the screen like that, I'm literally spinning on the spot, popping it behind me and bringing the other one back round, which was so handy in this instance, because I've already robbed so much tabletop space that I couldn't take any more. So that radiator we never use is well handy for letting your work dry on and within reach. So we have the chosen cloud technique that we're going to roll with, so I'm just setting everything up here because we're going to need some nice clean water. I didn't want to taint the white with the murk of the blue as much as I love the blue. That's not what we wanted here. And when I do apply this paint, you'd have seen when I was doing the dry brush, I had to be quite heavy-handed and really work that paint into the surface sometimes. With the wet paint, it's more of barely dragging it around the surface on a little dab here or there, so you're letting the water carry the paint more. You're just sort of guiding it with the paintbrush more than, you know, striping it on or positioning it direct with any force. So a nice little dab and a very light touch as you almost smear it around as well a little bit. It does have a nice technique. It's the more organic that it comes out, with, you know, a little hint of your guiding hand, the better it is. I've tried doing clouds in the past, you know, loads of times, and this has been the technique that I tend to gravitate towards, so I really like it. When I paint clouds outright, sometimes they look too structured, they look too rigid, they don't have the little tapering out edges that some of the clouds have. Like I say, on the verge of cartoony, and I didn't want that, unless I'm doing a cartoon, of course, or a little character building, which I will do in the future, because that's quite fun to have a play around with creating characters and just letting your imagination go wild. But that'll be in the future. Right now, let's get some clouds in this sky. As I'm applying the clouds and positioning them, I'm trying to be as sporadic as possible without falling into the trap of there must be one within so much space of blue or so much space of sky, because it's easily done when you go in to think I'll just add one there and one there. And that doesn't have to be the case when you're painting something that's, especially something that's a nature-based theme, and just something that you're concocting out of your head, or even with the reference material of this one. It can look too staged as well. And yes, sometimes you'll have a sky where there'll be clouds forevermore. Other times you might just have one or two. So if you do have a go yourself and you want it to be more of a clear sky, just pop 1 or 2 clouds in there. It's just a segment as well of a scene, so you don't have to do any clouds if you didn't want to. So working nights, I see all kinds of nights. I see nights where I see no stars at all, because it's all, you know, just dull and dreary because there's heavy clouds in the sky. Other nights it's been clear as crystal and you can see all the stars that the human eye can see, at least anyway, and the little sister clusters that are kicking around. It is one of the boons of working nights. I do waking nights, and when it's around 1, 2 in the morning and everyone's safely asleep and tucked up in bed and pretty much all the lights are out and you have a clear sky, you could just stare at those stars for quite a long time, looking around trying to pick out any constellations that I know. So I don't know them all, I know a handful, so it's always cool to see those. And yeah, other times very wispy clouds, so they're, you know, not shaped like this at all. They're more sort of thin and drug out, almost like drag, you know, like they've been drug across the sky and took off somewhere and there's just a little trail left. And other times they've been clouds just as you'd see them during the day. It's really beautiful when you see the moon peer through multiple layers of clouds. So it looks like the clouds are literally like a tunnel leading up to the moon. It's really beautiful. I do try to get some pictures. I'll have to, well, not necessarily when I'm at work, but when I'm at home, so I don't tend to stay up quite late sometimes. Other times I'm very pooped and I just go right out. But it would be good to get some pictures to show those of you who don't work nights and miss out on some of these beautiful sights that crop up in the middle of the night / early hours of the morning. So yeah, with the clouds that you're applying, like I say, you don't have to do them exactly as I have, you don't have to position them exactly as I have. If you want to go heavy on the clouds, go heavy on the clouds. If you want no clouds, go no clouds. But yeah, with my particular take on this and where I wanted them to be sporadic without dominating. I want them to be part of the image, not the focus of the image. And I do really like how they came out in the end. They are being completely honest, which is what I want to be with this channel. Some of the best clouds that I've painted. So I shan't be forgetting how I did this, and I definitely shan't since it's being recorded. So if I do clouds again in the future, I'm most likely going to do this technique again. At least when I'm working flat. This wouldn't be a viable technique if I was working on a circular surface, or you know, something that couldn't be laid down flat so it can rest and dry that way. It's likely to run, and then you'll have like a beautiful cloud for perhaps a quart of your cloud, and then the rest will just run around the corner and off the edge. Which in itself might have a really nice effect, thinking about it, because drips are beautiful, as long as you don't want them. As long as you want them, they can be rather troublesome if you don't let your canvas dry flat and they run down. So that's what I had to do with the Cosmic Cat. That took a number of days to do in the end, not because it was a challenging image or a complicated image. It just took a lot of drying time in between, and I really had to keep it flat, otherwise it would not have come out as good as it had. It would have been a big runny mess, and it wouldn't have been the sort of cosmic background that I wanted, like nebulas and all the different colours that you get. But of course, keeping with, because again, it's a blue and purple theme. They're running throughout. I think the only one that isn't a blue-purple theme is the final canvas. So I'm doing 6 in total to start off for a friend of mine. And so far, she's loved what I've done, which is brilliant. project. It's one thing to love the work yourself, but when it's for someone else, they need to love it too. So I'm glad she's very happy with what I've done so far, and hopefully she'll love the cosmic cat as well. As, I'm not a cat person, I really like it. I might do one with my girls. Or just a very big backdrop in that style, full stop, so it's really pretty and relaxing to look at. So anyway, back to the current project, Starry Night Sky. Oh yes, and you will, I think I mentioned before, you will see me use a lot of cling film. Or not necessarily a lot of cling film, it lasts for a while, but it's brilliant for keeping your paint in your palette wet for continuous work, like the Starry Night Sky and or even the first two, which don't really have a name. One of those palettes has lasted, in fact the palette that's not the one that I'm using right now, but the one with the blues on, that is from the first two canvases from the very first day, and this is perhaps 4 or 5 days later and that paint is still good. So it's really, really handy to keep wastage to a minimum. And I also use it for things like if I'm sculpting or using something that needs to dry, like mod rock, clay, paper mache. I'll pop a piece of cling film down first and either tape it or hold it in place somehow, or wrap it around a board if I'm working off a board, and then whatever I'm working on doesn't have to be shifted anywhere, it can just rest there, dry, and then 9 times out of 10 it just peels right off. If it doesn't, it just leaves a clear piece of cling film stuck there, which I prefer over ripping. So I think everyone who's had a go at paper mache or sculpting in a school or a workplace, you always put newspaper down, which is brilliant for protecting surfaces and whatnot, but it also always sticks to your work at the end, and you have to tear it off, and then you get bits of print left there, you get bits of torn paper residue. I personally would rather have a little tiny piece of clear cling film stuck on the bottom of my work, so it's not so visible to the eye. So yeah, I do swear by it, and you can use it again and again. So it's not something where you waste a lot of it either, like the bits that I use on the plates, they will stick with them, and if they don't come into contact with the paint whatsoever, I'll just pop them on the side and use them again for the next palette of paint that I'm going to use, or plate of paint that I'm going to use in this case. And same for when you wrap it around a board. There are several boards going in places where I've worked that are covered in cling film that have been used year after year. You can wipe them down as well, so you don't have to worry about cross-contaminating your materials. So yeah, it's very handy. I'd say it's a very handy tip/trick to bear in mind. So on the second layer of clouds, I'm not going over the whole cloud again, and I might add the odd one or two here or there. It's to start to build up and pick out highlights. So some of the clouds, I don't think any of them I went over again completely. I'd pick, you know, the vast percentage of one, or place another cloud over the top of that one. So it has a really, really nice effect as you build them up, and that's what makes it look more realistic as well, because you wouldn't just have, necessarily anyway, when you look up, one cloud to the left of you, one cloud to the right of you. they're all at different distances to one another, so they'll cross over and they'll appearingly blend and then move away from one another again. Nature is beautiful. So yeah, this is how I'll build up the layers, by not covering entirely the first layer, and allowing it to just be free, like a cloud is. So what we'll be doing next is really some of the more final touches to the cloud, and that's where we're going to introduce the little purple element. So with that, we're going to again keep it quite watery, because we don't want just bold purple lines running across the bottom of our clouds. They will look so out of place. And I've brought the purple back down, or to the verge of pastel lilac, with the white there. And with this, it'll initially be applied in more of a brush stroke, but then I need to disperse it a little bit so it can go cloudy like the rest of the cloud, and not just be, like I say, this big old purple underbelly. And this was built up, I think, a couple of layers. There wasn't so much drying time in between, because this was little hints, little highlights, or low lights since they're coming up from the bottom, I guess. And they do have a really nice after effect on, when they're dry on the clouds. Because again, looking at the clouds at night, or like especially as dusk and dawn, you get some really, really beautiful colours radiate from those clouds. I've seen anything from oranges and reds to blues and purples, and pretty much everything in between, and they always look amazing. It's hard not to just stop and take them in, especially if you're lucky enough to have any sort of tall trees in the area, so you can pretty much ignore the house line down and just appreciate almost the silhouette of the trees against the vivid colours of the dusk sky or the dawn sky. So it's a little bit of that going on as well, which does work in this particular instance, because where I've positioned the moons, with the moon, say from the left of one canvas to the right of the other, it is like a dusk till dawn transition, so it won't seem so bizarre having those little hints of colours. You don't really see them in the middle of the night, but you do see them, like say, in the very early hours of the morning and the very late hours of the end of the day. So yes, that's what we're doing right now. In my version of this, I don't choose to do the purple tint to all of the clouds. Again, rolling with that, as natural as possible sporadic element. I didn't highlight, low light, whichever one you like, every cloud. I picked most, but I didn't do every cloud. Again, just because through what I've seen, it's not always like that. You can look at one point of the sky and you have all these colours going down like a rainbow party of clouds, and then you can look the other side or like turn around and look behind you. There'll just be some plain white cloud, or not plain, I don't want to call clouds plain. You'll just get some white ones, or if it's going to rain that night, some dark grey ones. So yeah, I didn't want to have that purple hint everywhere, and wanted it to be just a hint. Again, didn't want this to be something that was, too eye-catching either. I wanted this image, all parts of this image to be relevant and important, and the focus is the whole and not just, oh, that's just a beautiful moon right there, or those clouds are rather lovely, but you don't pay attention to everything else. I wanted it to be almost like a photograph. You take it all in. as always, at some point I end up touching the paint. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I love touching paint. I love getting my hands in there. It's very sensory, it's very relaxing, I enjoy it. And you'd be surprised what you can do with your fingers. They are a tool, not just to use other tools. They're tools by themselves. You've technically got 5 paintbrushes on one hand. And even like the side of your hand, you'll be surprised. Have an experiment if you don't mind getting your hands dirty. I know some people don't like getting their hands dirty. Like literally don't like getting muck on their hands. I've worked with people that don't like getting muck on their hands. I've got friends that don't like touching anything that's going to leave a mark on them. I do, however. I love, at the end of the day, when I've got paint up my fingernails, a splodge on my arm somewhere that's, I don't know how it got there. I've even gone away with flicks of paint on my face. It all washes off. It might dye your skin temporarily sometimes, depending on what paint you've been using or what material you've been using. But it is fun, and you get, it's not a bond with paint, it's just you genuinely feel it. And I'll be doing that as well in the future at some point. Do some painting that is just solely with my hands, no brush, no pencil, nothing. I've done it in the past, and they've been really good. If I am, this was when I was young and not savvy with taking pictures of everything that I did. And there's a couple of pictures kicking around that aren't too in focus, but they show you just what you can do with your hands, and they'll put it into perspective, just how much freedom you have with those 4 digits in a thumb alone, the 5 digits. So, well, here we are coming to the end of the Starry Night Sky collection. This has been fun. Again, I'm loving being able to work in blues. I've said it loads of times already, I'm sure, and I will say it many times more. I do love blue. It is such a relaxing, beautiful colour. So I felt very lucky that this was the colour palette my friend chose. And yeah, I did some things here better than I have in any other thing. Like I say, the clouds, I absolutely loved the clouds. They were so beautiful. They came out, I won't say perfect because nothing's perfect, they came out as beautiful as they could, just like they were in my mind when you're trying to picture these things. And the stars, I really liked the stars. I will be using that again in the future, just that tiny hint of metallic / pearl paint in amongst all the matte based sort of paint, you know, just the outright colours, for that little reflective quality that it brings. So used right, and this was definitely used right in my opinion, it can make a painting just pop, as they say. So I think we're just about done. I'll get them side by side in a second. And yeah, it's been a pleasure again, and once again I have to stress I feel so lucky to be able to try this and to share this with you all, and keep growing and keep improving and keep getting better. And for once being able to do something that I genuinely love, enjoy, and happen to be good at as well, which is a fantastic bonus. So thank you all for coming by again. I really do hope you've enjoyed this, and I'm so grateful for all of you checking this out, and those of you who comment, those of you who don't really, doesn't matter. I'm just happy that you've come to see it. And there we go. So beautiful. Again, thank you all. Take care and hopefully see you again soon.